There are moments in life that change everything. Not the big dramatic ones we plan for, but the quiet ones. The ones that happen in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday, when you are just trying to get through the day. This is one of those stories. Her name was Elena. 34 years old, with dark hair pinned back neatly and a red apron that she wore like a second skin. She had worked at Fairview Grocery for 6 years. 6 years of early mornings and tired feet and a smile she kept ready even on the hardest days. Elena was not the kind of person who complained. She was the kind of person who noticed things. Who saw the elderly man struggling to reach the top shelf and got there before he even had to ask. Who remembered that the little boy who came in every Saturday liked the orange-flavored candy near the checkout. Who understood without being told that sometimes people just needed someone to be kind to them. That was Elena. And on this particular Tuesday afternoon in the frozen foods aisle, that quality was about to cost her everything she had worked for. The little girl appeared out of nowhere. Or at least that is how it seemed. One moment the aisle was quiet and the next there was a child standing alone between the freezer cases. She could not have been more than 7 years old. Blonde hair in 2 braids. A soft blue dress. And a stuffed fox clutched tightly in both small hands. Her name was Sophie. And Sophie was having one of the hardest moments of her young life. See, Sophie experienced the world differently than most children her age. Sounds that other people barely noticed felt enormous to her. The hum of the freezer units. The distant beeping of the checkout registers. The echo of voices bouncing off the hard floors. To Sophie, all of that was pressing in on her from every direction. And when her father had stepped away just for a moment to take a phone call, Sophie had wandered, and then the world had gotten too loud. Too bright. Too much. She pressed both hands against her ears. Her face crumpled. And she began to cry. Not a tantrum cry. Not the kind of crying that comes from wanting something. This was the cry of a child who was overwhelmed. Who needed someone to understand without making it worse. Elena heard it from 3 aisles away. She set down the box she was restocking and walked toward the sound. When she turned the corner and saw Sophie standing there alone. Hands over her ears. Face red and wet with tears. Elena did not hesitate. She did not look around for a manager. She did not stand at a distance and call out. She walked right up to that little girl. Crouched down so she was at eye level. And held out the small stuffed fox that had fallen from Sophie's hands. She did not say a word at first. She just held it out. Patient and steady. The way you hold out your hand to a frightened animal. Slow and still and safe. Sophie's eyes opened. She looked at the fox. Then at Elena. And something in her small shoulders began to ease just the tiniest bit. Elena spoke softly then. Not loud. Not fast. Just a calm and quiet voice, like she was talking about something ordinary. She said something like, "Here is your friend. He was waiting for you right here." Sophie reached out and took the fox. Her crying did not stop completely, but it changed. It became quieter. Less desperate. Elena stayed crouched right there on the cold tile floor of that aisle. Not moving. Not rushing. Just being present. The way that truly good people know how to be. That is when the man in the navy suit appeared. He had come around the corner at a near run. His face tight with worry. His eyes scanning the aisle until they landed on Sophie. He exhaled like a man who had been holding his breath for years. He was tall and broad-shouldered. Somewhere in his mid-40s, with the kind of face that belonged to someone used to being in charge. His name was Marcus. Marcus Caldwell. And if you had looked him up on any business news website, you would have found his photograph next to words like visionary and CEO and self-made. He had built a logistics company from a single truck and a borrowed garage into an operation that employed over 4,000 people. He was the kind of man other men studied. The kind whose schedule was managed by 3 different assistants. The kind who had not stood in a grocery store aisle in years because someone else handled those things. But today was different. Today was Sophie's appointment day. And Marcus always took Sophie to her appointments himself. No exceptions. No matter what calls came in. No matter what deals needed closing. Sophie came first. Always. He crossed the aisle in 4 strides and knelt beside his daughter. He spoke to her in the same quiet way Elena had. His big hand resting gently on her back. Not patting. Just there. A steady warmth. Sophie leaned into him and the crying softened further into small hiccuping breaths. Marcus looked up at Elena. Still crouched there on the floor beside his daughter. Red apron. Name tag. Dark hair coming slightly loose from its pin. And he said simply, "Thank you." 2 words. But the way he said them. The weight behind them. It was clear he meant something much larger. Elena smiled and said it was no trouble at all. Then she stood up and began to move away. Because there was restocking to be done and she had already been away from her section too long. She did not see the store manager watching from the end of the aisle. His name was Gerald. Barrel-chested and humorless in the way that some people in middle management become when they have confused authority with importance. Gerald had a policy. It was written nowhere official, but everyone on staff knew it. Employees did not get involved with customers beyond their assigned duties. Restocking was restocking. Customer service was someone else's department. And Gerald had been looking for a reason. That was the truth of it. He had been looking for a reason for a while now. Because Elena had been offered a shift supervisor position twice and turned it down both times to keep her flexible hours. Hours that allowed her to care for her own mother who was aging and needed her. And Gerald had taken that personally in the way small people sometimes do. So when he walked up to Elena 20 minutes later in the break room, his arms crossed and his expression already decided. She knew before he spoke what was coming. He said she had abandoned her station. He said she had engaged in unauthorized customer interaction. He said these things with the satisfaction of someone who had been waiting to say them. And then he said she was dismissed. Effective immediately. Elena stood very still. She did not argue. She had learned long ago that arguing with Gerald was like talking to a wall. Except walls did not enjoy it. She untied her apron with steady hands. She folded it neatly. Set it on the break room table. And she walked out. In the parking lot she sat in her car for a long moment. The afternoon sun coming through the windshield. Warming her hands in her lap. She thought about her mother. About the mortgage that was already stretched thin. About the 6 years she had given to that store. 6 years of showing up early and staying late and never once calling in sick when she could help it. She did not cry. She was past the age of crying over things she could not control. She was 34, but she carried the wisdom of someone older. The kind of wisdom that comes from having already lost things. Already survived things. Already learned that sometimes life asks you to trust it even when it does not make sense. She started her car. And she drove home. Marcus was still in the store. He had taken Sophie to the small cafe area near the entrance to calm down over a juice box. When a woman nearby who had witnessed part of what happened leaned over and told him quietly what she had seen. What Gerald had done. Marcus looked at the woman. Then he looked toward the back of the store where the manager's office was. He was quiet for a moment. The way powerful men are sometimes quiet before they say something that changes things. Then he stood up. Took Sophie's hand. And walked back through the store. He found Gerald near the customer service counter. Clipboard in hand. The look of a man who believed his afternoon had gone well. Marcus introduced himself. Not with arrogance. Not with the particular cruelty of someone flexing their power. But simply and directly. He said his name. He said the name of his company. He said that Caldwell Logistics had been running a corporate account with this grocery chain for 11 years. Ordering supplies and catered lunches for company events through their commercial division. He said all of this calmly. Then he said he had witnessed what had happened in the aisle. And he had heard what happened after. Gerald's clipboard lowered slightly. Marcus said that the employee who had been dismissed had shown more genuine care and skill in those few minutes than most people show in a lifetime. He said that his daughter Sophie had autism. That she experienced sensory overload in ways that most people did not understand. That a wrong response in that moment could have made everything worse. And that Elena had done everything right. Without training. Without being asked. Out of pure human decency. He said that dismissing someone for that was not a company policy he could continue to support with his business. Gerald opened his mouth. Closed it again. Marcus was not finished. He said he would like to speak with the regional manager. He said he would like to do it today. And he said it in the tone of a man who was not asking permission. The regional manager's name was Diane. She was reached by phone within the hour. She was the kind of manager who had gotten to her position by understanding that some problems needed to be handled before they became larger problems. When Marcus Caldwell explained the situation to her, she listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for 3 seconds. Then she said she would look into it immediately. Elena was at home. She was sitting at the kitchen table across from her mother, telling her what had happened in the careful way you tell someone you love about bad news. Her mother was 71. White-haired and sharp-eyed, and not the sort of woman who fell apart easily. She reached across the table and put her hand over Elena's. She said, "You did the right thing." Elena said she knew. Her mother said, "Then that is what matters." And Elena nodded because she believed it. She did believe it. But believing something is right does not make the practical consequences of it disappear. And the practical consequences were sitting right there between them on the kitchen table. Her phone rang at 5:30 that evening. A number she did not recognize. She almost did not answer it. But something made her. The voice on the other end introduced itself as Diane Marsh, regional manager. Elena straightened in her chair. Diane explained that there had been a review of the afternoon's incident. That the decision to dismiss her had been reviewed and reversed. That her position was reinstated effective immediately. And that Gerald would be having a conversation with HR about employee conduct policies. Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she said thank you. Diane said that the thanks belonged elsewhere. She said that a concerned customer had brought the situation to her attention. And left it at that. Elena returned to work the following Thursday. The morning shift. She tied her apron in the break room and pinned her name tag in its usual place. Things were quieter with Gerald. Not warm, but quieter. And that was enough for now. She went back to her section and began the morning restock. The work was the same as it had always been. But something felt different. Not in the store. In her. Like a small thing had been confirmed that she had always suspected but was not always sure of. That doing the right thing matters. Even when it costs you. Even when no one is watching. Even when you drive home alone in the afternoon sun not knowing how the story ends. 3 weeks later on a Saturday morning. Elena was near the front of the store arranging a display of seasonal items. When she heard the automatic doors open. She looked up. And there was Marcus. Sophie beside him. The little girl's hand in his. Sophie was wearing a yellow dress today and her braids were tied with small white ribbons. She was looking around the store with the careful eyes of a child who was taking everything in. When Sophie spotted Elena, she stopped walking. She reached into the small bag she was carrying. And she pulled out the stuffed fox. She held it up. Like she was showing Elena. Like she was saying, "Look. He is still here. I am still here. We are okay." Elena crouched down the same way she had that first day. Eye level. Patient. She smiled at Sophie and said, "He looks like he has been on some adventures." Sophie nodded very seriously. Marcus stood beside his daughter and he looked at Elena with an expression that people in their 50s and 60s will recognize. The look of someone who has lived enough life to know that grace is rare. And that when you encounter it you do not let it pass without acknowledgement. He said he wanted to properly introduce himself. He said he had spoken with the regional manager. He said he hoped things had been made right. Elena said they had. Marcus said good. Then he said something else. He said that his company had a foundation. One that supported employment and skills training programs for caregivers and people with disabilities. He said they had been looking for someone with genuine compassion and people skills to help run community outreach for the program. He said it was not a small position. It came with real responsibility and real support. And he said that if she was interested he would like to have that conversation. Elena looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at Sophie, who was making her fox wave its small stuffed paw. Elena laughed. A real laugh. The kind that comes from somewhere deep and warm. She said she would be very interested in having that conversation. Now here is what this story is really about. Because it is not about a CEO using his power to fix things. Though he did. And it is not about a bad manager getting his comeuppance. Though that happened too. This story is about Elena crouching down on a cold tile floor. With no one watching. No reward in sight. And choosing to be kind anyway. It is about Sophie holding out a stuffed fox like an offering of trust to a stranger. It is about Marcus understanding that the most valuable thing his money could do was recognize something money cannot buy. It is about all the moments in your own life. If you are sitting with this story right now and you have a few decades behind you, you know what it is like to do the right thing when it costs you something. You know what it is like to wait in a parking lot and wonder if it was worth it. You know what it is like to sit across a kitchen table from someone you love and say, I did what I believed was right. And I would do it again. Those moments define us. Not the easy ones. The hard ones. The ones where we had every reason to look away and we chose not to. Sophie still has her fox. She named him later. She named him Tuesday. Because that was the day a stranger on the floor of a grocery store reminded her that the world could be safe. That people could be gentle. That kindness exists even in the loudest, brightest, most overwhelming places. And Marcus still drives Sophie to her appointments himself. Every single one. No exceptions. No matter what calls come in. Some things do not change. Some things should not. And Elena sat across from Marcus in a real meeting room 3 weeks after that Saturday morning in the store. And they talked for 2 hours about what it means to build something that actually helps people. She took the position. She is still there now. And sometimes on the hard days. When the work is heavy and the problems feel bigger than the solutions. She thinks about a little girl with her hands over her ears. And a stuffed fox waiting on the cold floor. And she remembers why she said yes. If this story moved something in you today. If it reminded you of someone you know. Or a moment in your own life when you chose kindness over convenience. Please give this video a like. It helps more people find stories like this one. And if you know someone who needs to hear something warm today, share this with them. It costs nothing and it might mean everything. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss a story. We bring you new ones every week. Ones about real human moments. The kind that remind us who we are and who we can be. And leave us a comment below. Tell us about a time when someone's simple act of kindness changed your day. Or tell us about a time you were the one who chose to stop and help. We read every single one. And your story matters here. Just like Elena's did. Just like Sophie's does. Just like yours.